Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 modding video. Today we're checking out yet another weapon released by myself and Pig. And today's little weapon mod is going to be something very interesting, something we've talked about for quite a while, and have finally gotten around to making. And that is a brand new, one-shot, break-action pistol known as the Marksman pistol. This thing is going to be a very heavy mid to late game weapon. It does use a very late game ammo and has very high damage, but it is single shot. You only get to shoot it once before you need to reload. So it's going to be high damage, but low fire rate. So it's a bit of a trade-off. This thing will be able to one-shot a lot of humanoid enemies, but not big things like death claws. So you're going to want to use it wisely. Interestingly enough, it actually makes a really good hunting weapon, as it takes out most animals pretty easily. That being said, you don't really want to spend your 4570 on that, as this weapon does come in 4570, a nice big round for a single shot pistol. Now, this weapon is actually based on a real life pistol known as the 45 Super Comanche. Now, in real life, the Super Comanche uses 45 Long Colt, which is not really the same as the 45 ACP in the base game. Alternatively, you can load it with 410 shells, which we could have mirrored in munitions, but we chose not to, as we already have a lot of 410 options, and a single shot 410 would be practically useless, as would a single shot 45, which is why we kind of upped this guy up to a 4570. It isn't exactly one-to-one as the real life thing, but I think it's a lot more fun and a lot more interesting in the sandbox, and there's no reason something like this couldn't exist. So if you want a heavy-hitting pocket sniper, this is going to be your guy. This thing does use vanilla animations, believe it or not. We are able to use the flare gun animations for this weapon. There are a couple of break action animations out there, but most of them are designed for a 6-shot cylinder, and none of them really fit this style. So surprisingly, the flare gun anim was the best fit for us. It does have a handful of attachments that let you change the way this weapon performs. Nothing that's going to be super transformative and make this into a totally new gun, but you can tweak out the range and the accuracy, have some different grip options. There are a couple of uniques as well that will change up the aesthetic of this weapon, as well as add some other cool effects. And you can even throw on a nice selection of scopes for this weapon to change out its effectiveness at range. Most pistols in this game don't really have a ton of scope options. The longest you typically see, at least in vanilla, is a short scope. This guy has a bit more than that, which we'll talk about in the attachment section of this video. Now, if you want to get your hands on this weapon, it is actually added to the level list, and I specifically chose to add it to different enemies that I thought would be more fitting. So you will find this thing on the Minutemen. You will also find it on the Trappers from Far Harbor, as Far Harbor is going to be a requirement for this weapon, considering it does use 4570 from that DLC. Now, the lever action won't be the only gun using it. Additionally, you can occasionally find this in the Commonwealth on Raider bosses, only bosses, so it's sort of a unique hero weapon for them, but you can also purchase it from shops. All of this will happen after level 15, so level 15 is not super late in the game, meaning you get a pretty high damage weapon, but again, it is single shot, so that balances a little bit. And additionally, if you happen to find one of these in the Commonwealth at level 15, you're not going to have a ton of ammo, as it's using DLC ammo that doesn't really open up until level 20. So it's a pretty interesting little balancing act. It's going to be a nice heavy pistol that will last you a little bit later than most pistols. Alright, I think that covers most of the basics. Let's go ahead and hop in game and start checking out some of the finer details like the uniques and animations. But first, let's talk about the stats. And here we are in game with the Marksman pistol. As you can see, this thing is really cool looking. Has a nice aesthetic to a single action army, but it is a break action pistol, as just like the real life version, this does use single action army grips, which is pretty funny. Now then, this thing does have a slightly different aesthetic to the standard Comanche in real life, as the real one has a bit of a black finish on the metal, as well as black polymer furniture. And well, you know, that's just a little bit too modern for Fallout, so we throw on some nice hard steel and some wood grips. That being said, you can actually recreate the real life look with some of the attachments over at the weapons workbench. You can throw on the polymer. There's even a unique with a black finish. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now then, as far as stats are concerned, this thing has a base damage of about 75. Again, as always, ignore this number here, as my game has some perks I cannot remove. Now, this thing does use 4570 for that really high damage. Again, it is a single shot weapon with a fire rate of only 3, a range of 359. This thing is very effective at range, an accuracy of 70, a weight of 3.9 pounds, and a value of 94 caps. As you can see, we have 4 different sections on this weapon here. There are actually more than that, but right now it only has the basic stuff equipped, so there are more slots we can add when we get to the weapons workbench. Really quick though, let's go ahead and talk about the uniques available in this mod. First of all, we have the Man in Black, who has extremely dark furniture with the black plastic and a black finish on the metal here. And this thing does increasing amounts of damage as night grows longer and less damage during the day. That is the nocturnal effect. So if you want to take this thing out on little night excursions, you can, and you can even throw a suppressor on this thing. So it's a pretty good little stealthy gun, which is pretty nice. If you'd like to get your hands on this weapon, you can actually find it over in Far Harbor, specifically in the location Rayburn Point, where it is locked in a wall safe. Now, our next unique is known as the Comanche, and this guy is really, really cool. It looks like the standard option, but except it does have some engraving here on the receiver, as well as some nice detailing on the grips, both the rear grip and the front grip up here. It's hard to see in this preview menu because the lighting is a little goofy in Fallout 4, but there are some really, really cool designs here, here, and here. You'll see it a lot better in-game, in third person or in first person. Now, this thing does double damage if the target is at full health. So if you're attacking full health enemies, this thing actually does quite a bit of damage, because this thing already has a ton of damage. And now imagine maxed out pistol perks, maxed out receiver, and also the double damage at full health. This thing should be one-shotting a lot of things. Probably not a Deathclaw, but pretty much everything else. Now then, if you want to get your hands on this fella, it's actually sold in Far Harbor by Alan Lee. That's right, all the uniques in this mod are actually in Far Harbor, which makes sense considering they are all 4570, and that's where you're going to get the ammo most of the time. That being said, you can still find the regular version of this weapon in the Commonwealth, so it is spread around nice and evenly. Now then, let's take a look at animations and accuracy. There actually is a little bit to talk about here. Even though this thing does use a vanilla flare gun animations, I want to show it off so you guys can determine if clipping is a problem for your load order or if this looks good enough for you. And honestly, there isn't really any clipping, especially in its standard configuration that we have here. The only real clipping in this mod is with the scopes attached, and it's very, very minor. Now then, let's go ahead and show off that reload. A nice and beefy sound effect too for that 4570. There's the iron sights. Now, one thing you'll notice about these iron sights is that front iron sight is a bit thick. For a Marksman pistol, that's going to be kind of hard to use, and that's because I have a really short barrel on. The longer the barrel gets, that actually gets thinner as the front sight is pushed further away. But you can also throw on scopes, which will help with the accuracy. Now, speaking of accuracy, here are our targets up here. As you can see, we hit one no problem. And there's two. These are going to get a little bit more difficult, as again, this front iron sight is a bit finicky. That's four. Now, this is the one that always gives me trouble. And I actually did hit it. I usually miss with this gun, but it is still fairly accurate. You just kind of have to figure out how the sights work. They're pretty simple, but when you start getting to really, really small targets like that, it is a little bit more precise that you need to be and not just use the general shape of the sights, which is where I would recommend throwing on a scope if you're going to be aiming at targets that far away and that small. Now, speaking of scopes, let's go ahead and talk about the scopes and many other attachments available over at the weapons workbench, starting off with the receiver section. A pretty standard selection we have here, with standard all the way up through advanced. There's no full auto capability or anything there that's going to change the fire rate on this weapon, so it's a pretty standard selection here. That is going to give you pretty much double damage up here, as you can see, with perks and with maxed out receiver. I'm doing over 200 damage, and that number can get even higher. Now then, for the barrel section, we have the short barrel, the short heavy barrel, which is going to be octagonal, the medium and medium heavy barrel, and then the long and long heavy barrel. So some nice options there depending on what you want. We've also got some grip options, which will change out not only the rear but the front grip as well. We have the standard grip, the comfort grip, which comes in black, and the sharpshooter's grip, which has some nice staghorn on the back here, as well as some more bone or antler up on the front for a nice little splash of color if you're into a Western look. Now then, for sights, we have the option for the standard iron sights. We also do have glow sights, which will help a lot, especially if you're hunting at night. I would recommend throwing those on the man in black for that night hunting. We've also got a short scope, a medium scope, a long scope, and even a night vision scope, which looks kind of absurd here on the short barrel, but with a light, nice long barrel and some good furniture, this is a pretty cool little combo. Now, the thing about these scopes is they are mounted to the right side. As you can see, they kind of hang off, similar to a canted sight on most Western guns, but instead of coming out to the left, it is going to be coming out to the right. And the reason for that is because we wanted it not to clip with animations. If we put this anywhere else, your hand would just phase right through the scope. So we mounted it to the right, which might seem a little goofy. It even looks a little goofy in first person. But it's not actually something that's completely unheard of. There are scopes mounted to the right like this. You can actually see them on things like the broom handle, the Mauser. So it is something that happens, though it is very, very rare. But yeah, guys, I think that covers just about everything in the Marksman pistol, otherwise known as the Comanche 45 or the Super Comanche. This thing is really, really cool. I'm actually quite a fan of this weapon. I don't know how much I'm going to be using it in every playthrough, but I know that if I pick one up and I pick one up before the lever action, I'll be using it to get rid of some of that 4570 for some pretty high damage. It's a really fun one, and a lot of people have been asking for break action pistols for some reason. Most people ask for the Thompson Contender, but let's be honest, that thing is really, really ugly. But the Comanche is pretty, so I like it quite a bit. If you want a nice heavy 4570 pistol, this might be a mod for you. I believe it is already ported to Xbox, so if you want to grab it, you can grab it there, or you can use the link down in the description to grab it over on the Nexus. With that, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop an endorsement, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you'd like to support my work directly, you can do so using the link down in the description as well to support me over on Patreon. It is completely optional, of course. This is not anything you need to do, but if you'd like to donate and keep my work moving along, then you can do so there. But again, it is completely optional. Don't feel like you need to. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!